Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of Japan.
Thank you very much. Today I'm greatly honored to welcome my good friend, Prime Minister Abe of Japan, to the White House. Over the past 16 months, the Prime Minister and I have worked closely together to address common challenges, of which there are many, seize opportunities, and advance the interests of our nations. Today, we have had another deeply productive and very valuable discussion. We have developed not only a strong working relationship over the last year and a half, specifically 503 days, but a great personal friendship. I was honored by the tremendous hospitality the Prime Minister showed me when the American delegation went to Japan last year. It was really something very special. And we had the Prime Minister and Mrs. Abe as our guest at Mar-a-Lago in Palm Beach. The steadfast alliance between Japan and the United States is an enduring force of peace and stability in the Pacific region and around the world. From the beginning of my administration, the Prime Minister and I have been working to expand our cooperation in a range of areas, including defense and commerce, which is what we discussed today, as I prepare to meet next week with Kim Jong-un. And I want to bring up the fact that the Prime Minister and also President Moon of South Korea were extremely helpful, cooperative, and they'd like to see something happen. Be great for North Korea, South Korea, be great for Japan, the United States, and the world. Our partnership has been invaluable in reaching this important moment, and we will continue to be in very close communication in the weeks ahead, including the issue of Japanese abductees, which I know is of great personal importance to Prime Minister Abe. I hope the upcoming meeting in Singapore represents the beginning of a bright new future for North Korea, and indeed a bright new future for the world. The denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula would usher in a new era of prosperity, security, and peace for all Koreans, North and South, and for people everywhere. Prime Minister Abe and I are also working to improve the trading relationship between the United States and Japan, something we have to do. The United States seeks a bilateral deal with Japan that is based on the principle of fairness and reciprocity. We're working hard to reduce our trade imbalance, which is very substantial, remove barriers to U.S. exports, and to achieve a fair and mutually beneficial economic partnership. And we're on our way. The Prime Minister was telling us just moments ago that they're buying billions and billions of dollars of additional products of all kinds, military jets, airliners from Boeing, lots of farm products. We're going to be doing a lot more business with Japan, which is what everybody wants to see. There has never been a better time to invest in the United States. Thanks to our massive tax cuts, historic deregulation, a strong trade policy, which has just really begun, because I will tell you over the years it has been an extraordinarily weak trade policy, the opening of American energy, and a return to the rule of law, our economy is absolutely booming, best it's ever been. Unemployment is at the lowest level in nearly half a century. And for African American and Hispanic American workers, unemployment has reached its lowest level ever recorded. We welcome and encourage Japanese investors to open new plants and factories in the United States, and that will happen. The Prime Minister has told me that will happen. We want new auto plants going into Michigan and Pennsylvania and Ohio, and many of our states that have them and some that don't, and they'll be doing that. Japan has also remained a critical partner in our efforts to promote a free and open Pacific region. where sovereign nations uphold the rule of law, respect the rights of their neighbors, and honor the interests of their people. These core principles allowed diverse nations to thrive and prosper all together in one beautiful, peaceful atmosphere. We're all happy about it. It's what's happening now. Prime Minister Abe, it is a true privilege to work with you. You've become my great friend. I want to thank you for being here at the White House, for our meetings today, so productive. I'm also very proud to say that the bonds between our nations are stronger than ever before, and I know that together we can unlock incredible new opportunities, achieve remarkable new prosperity, and ensure the safety and security of our citizens for a very, very long time to come. And that's what we intend to do. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister.
大統領、G7 サミット、そして米朝首脳会談を控え、大変お忙しい時にこうしてこの温まる歓待をいただいたことに御礼を申し上げたいと思います。そして
I also would like to express my appreciation to the people of the United States for always warmly welcoming us as your ally. In 5 days, U.S.-North Korea summit is to take place. First of all, I would like to pay my deep respect to the outstanding leadership of President Trump as he made this decision that no past presidents were ever able to accomplish. In the last 18 months, we really spent many hours to discuss this issue. We shall never repeat the past mistakes. While this thought is completely shared between us, we are able to witness an historic talk which will take place shortly. Today, with President Trump, our discussion was focused on the issue of North Korea. What should we do as we approach the upcoming U.S.-North Korea summit, as well as for the peace and stability of Northeast Asia after the summit? On this topic, we took good amount of time and carried out in-depth and candid exchange of views. I'm not able to talk about the details of what we discussed, but one thing I can say is that Japan and the United States are always together. I strongly hope that this historic summit in Singapore be a resounding success. There is a beautiful port town, Niigata, facing the Sea of Japan. A mere 13-year-old girl living there was abducted by North Korea. 45 years have passed since then, during which time family members single-mindedly prayed for her return and kept on waiting. The parents became old. Remaining time is slipping away. It is the long-held desire of the Japanese people to have her and all of the abductees come home so that the parents, while they are healthy, can embrace the girl and other abductees again in their arms. Of course, I wish to directly face North Korea and talk with them so that abduction problem be resolved quickly. To this end, I am determined to take all possible means. On behalf of the citizens of Japan, I would like to thank President Trump and the people of the United States for their understanding and support toward the resolution of the abduction issue.
Japan will continue to ask for complete implementation of the successive United Nations Security Council resolutions. There is no change at all for Japan's policy to seek comprehensive solution of the abduction, nuclear and missile programs, and to realize real peace in the Northeast Asia. This is what Japan strongly hopes for. Now, a major step forward is about to be taken. Donald, President Trump, you are about to make a new history. Not only Japan, but the whole international community is strongly looking forward for the United States-North Korea summit to open doors toward peace and stability of the Northeast Asia. North Korea abounds with rich natural resources. North Korea has a diligent workforce. If North Korea is willing to take steps toward the right direction, North Korea can see a bright future ahead for itself. Japan, based on the Japan-North Korea-Pyongyang Declaration, is prepared to settle the unfortunate past, to normalize our diplomatic relations, and to provide economic cooperation. Japan wishes to play the role as much as possible. Donald, I value highly your strong commitment to world peace and prosperity. In closing, I wish to add that Japan stands ready to make every effort to assist you for the success of U.S.-North Korea summit. Thank you.
Appreciate it. So we'll take a few questions, if we can start. John Roberts, go ahead.
Mr. President, on the subject, and I have a question for the Prime Minister as well. On the subject of North Korea, how far are you willing to go in terms of economic, security, political guarantees with Kim? Are you willing to move down the road toward normalizing relationships, normalizing relations with North Korea, as the Prime Minister suggested he was willing to at some point? You teased us as well out on the South Lawn here last week. You said that you might sign a peace deal to end the war. Where are you with that? And what was in the letter?
Well, the letter was just a greeting. It was really very nice. Perhaps I can get approval to put it out. It was really a very warm letter, a very nice letter. I appreciated it very much. And nothing other than we look forward to seeing you, and we look forward to the summit, and hopefully some wonderful things will work out. So it was really very warm, very nice. We appreciated it. I think, John, that we are going to we're going to have a great success. I don't think it will be in one meeting. I think it'll take longer than that. This has been going on for many, many decades. This is something that should have been solved by other presidents, as I've said often before, long before this point. They waited till the last second, and they shouldn't have waited. This should have been solved by many others. I'm not just saying President Obama. I'm saying other presidents. A long time ago, this could have been solved in a lot easier manner and a lot less dangerous manner. But it wasn't, so I'll solve it, and we'll get it done. As far as the Prime Minister is concerned, we will agree, and we have agreed, that we're going to be helping, if the deal is done, we're going to be helping North Korea. We're going to be working with China. We're going to be working with South Korea. President Xi of China has been terrific. The border has been certainly more closed than ever before. I'd like him to close it a little bit more, but it's been more closed than ever before. China has never worked with us this way, and, you know, I give him a lot of credit because, as you know, we're in a dispute as to the imbalance of trade. It's a massive imbalance in China's favor. It's been that way for many decades, and it should have also been handled by previous presidents, but it wasn't. So we'll handle that too. But I give President Xi tremendous credit. And I give President Moon tremendous credit. He really would like to see something happen. They've been living with the threat of war from their beginning, and it doesn't make sense. And I really believe that Kim Jong-un wants to do something. I think he wants to see something incredible happen for the people of North Korea. So we have a lot of great opportunities right now. Shouldn't have waited to this point, but we have a lot of great opportunity. John, please.
Again, Mr. President, would you be willing to go so far as to normalize relations with North Korea? And what about the idea of signing some sort of an agreement on the 12th to end the war?
Well, it could be. We could sign an agreement. As you know, that would be a first step. It's what happens after the agreement that really is the big point. But, yes, we could absolutely sign an agreement. We're looking at it. We're talking about it with them. We're talking about it with a lot of other people, but that could happen. But that's really the beginning. Sounds a little bit strange, but that's probably the easy part. The hard part remains after that. Normalizing relations is something that I would expect to do, I would hope to do when everything's complete. We would certainly hope to do that. I know that Prime Minister Abe and President Moon have told me very strongly that they are going to go and they will help them economically tremendously. Japan has a tremendous stake, and so do they. We, on the other hand, are very far away. We're very, very far away. But Japan will be helping. I believe China will be helping economically also. I think China wants to see something very good happen, very positive happen. And certainly South Korea has already stated their intentions. They will be very helpful. So there are a lot of good factors lined up for North Korea, a lot of tremendous factors that give it tremendous potential. It has tremendous potential because the people are great. And we would certainly like to see normalization, yes.
And, Prime Minister Abe, if I could address you as well. We know how important an issue the abductees is for you. President Trump said at Mar-a-Lago during your last meeting that it's a very important issue for him as well. We know about the medium-range ballistic missiles. Did you get an assurance from President Trump that he would address both of those in his first meeting with Kim?
Today, we had long hours of discussion with President Trump, good amount of discussion. On the issue of abduction, I was able to have a detailed discussion, and I think President Trump fully understands the situation. He supports the position of Japan. Last year, President Trump visited Japan. On that occasion, he met with the families of abductees. I told you about the 13-year-old girl abducted. The mother of this girl met with President Trump, and very seriously he intently listened to the voices and views of the family members. So President Trump, amongst the world leaders, I think he is one of the leaders who understands the issue the most, the greatest. So at the upcoming summit, the importance of abduction would be explained to Mr. Kim Jong-un. What about the medium-range missiles? As I said earlier on in my statement, the Security Council's resolution must be implemented. All weapons of mass destruction and all ballistic missiles, these are the words used in the resolution of the Security Council. In other words, the Security Council resolution must be completely implemented. On this point, between Japan and U.S. and the international community share the same view. I'm convinced about it. Thank you.
Mr.
Yushino of TBS, please. Next question, please.
Thank you. My name is Yusa from TBS Television. I have a question for both President Trump as well as the Prime Minister Abe. You have not used the language of applying the largest pressure on North Korea, but are you continuing with the sanction and the denuclearization? You will be asking for that. And what is the deadline for the denuclearization? And my question to Prime Minister is how to apply pressure to North Korea and the tone of the language. Are you in full agreement, complete agreement with the United States? President Trump has stated that we are implementing sanctions, and those sanctions are very strong sanctions. He also stated that until North Korea takes the action, the sanctions will not be lifted. And Japan is in full agreement, and Japan's position is perfectly in alignment with the United States. And in our summit meeting this time, we had in-depth discussion with President Trump as to how we should respond to North Korea. And as for the future policy on North Korea, inclusive of the U.S.-North Korean summit meeting, we had detailed coordination aligning our positions. As I have already mentioned, Japan and the United States are always together. Japan and United States will be in full alignment to seek success for the historic U.S.-North Korea summit meeting in Singapore.
Yes, thank you very much. Maximum pressure is absolutely in effect. We don't use the term anymore because we're going into a friendly negotiation. Perhaps after that negotiation, I will be using it again. You'll know how well we do in the negotiation. If you hear me saying we're going to use maximum pressure, you'll know the negotiation did not do well, frankly. There's no reason to say it. We, in the meantime, haven't removed any sanctions. We have a list of over 300 massive, in some cases, sanctions to put on North Korea, and I've decided to hold that until we can make a deal, because I really believe there's a potential to make a deal, and I just don't think it's nice going in under those circumstances. But yes, the campaign hasn't changed. China has continued to hold the border. We, again, would like them to do more in that sense, but they've been really good, and the president has been very good. But maximum sanction is there. We are leaving all of the existing sanctions on. We have many, many sanctions to go, but I don't want to use them unless it's necessary. And I don't think it will be necessary, but we will soon know. Okay? Thank you. Sager and Jetty. Where's Sager? Daily Caller.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question for the Prime Minister as well. Mr. President, under what you've said repeatedly that you are willing to walk away from the negotiations if they don't do well. Under what exact conditions would you be walking away from that summit? And if the summit does go well, will you be inviting North Korean leader Kim Jong-un to the United States?
Well, the answer is yes to the second part of your question, but certainly if it goes well. And I think it would be well received. I think he would look at it very favorably, so I think that could happen. All I can say is I am totally prepared to walk away. I did it once before. You have to be able to walk away. If you're not going to be able to walk away, we didn't walk away from the horrible Iran deal that was signed. And if you look at what's happened since I signed that deal, Iran, and in all fairness, I say it with great respect for the people of Iran, but Iran is acting a lot differently. They're no longer looking so much to the Mediterranean. They're no longer looking so much to what's going on in Syria, what's going on in Yemen, and lots of other places. They're a much different country over the last 3 months. And again, I say that with hope that maybe something can happen. But when you mention sanctions, we're putting sanctions on Iran, the likes of which nobody has ever seen before, including, frankly, North Korea. That would have been the next phase if we did it or find it necessary to do. But nuclear to me is always first, and we're going to be fine with respect to Iran. But we also, Sager, got something out of it that's very important. A lot of the people that write about this, some of whom I have great respect for, but they haven't picked it up. Iran is not the same country that it was a few months ago. They're a much, much different group of leaders. And I hope at some point they'll come to us and we'll sit down and we'll make a deal that's good for them and good for us and good for everybody. And it'll be great for Iran. I expect it to be, I want it to be great for Iran. But if they would have walked our side from some of the horrible provisions that you know as well as I do, and probably everybody sitting here knows, we could have had a great deal. Nothing wrong with the deal, but there's something wrong with that deal. We had a great opportunity to make a phenomenal deal. So I am totally prepared to walk. It could happen. Maybe it won't be necessary. I hope it won't be necessary to walk, because I really believe that Kim Jong-un wants to do something that is going to be great for his people and also great for his family and great for himself. Okay? Thank you very much.
Sir, if you do invite him to the White House, or to the United States, would it be here at the White House or at Mar-a-Lago?
Maybe we'll start with the White House. What do you think?
Mr. Prime Minister, you are the only major world leader not to have a sit-down or a planned sit-down with Kim Jong-un. You hinted in your address today that you would be willing to do so on the matter of abductees. Do you have any plans currently to do so, and would it be focused solely on abductees, or would you be willing to have a separate denuclearization discussion with Kim Jong-un directly without the United States? Thank you.
Of course, on the issue of abduction, we have to resolve this problem. With Abe administration, this is of the highest priority. And if anything contributes to that resolution, if the talk leads to the solution of the problem between US and North Korea or between Japan and North Korea, the meetings we wish to have on the issue of abduction in the final analysis, Chairman Kim Jong-un and between me, between Japan and North Korea, the problem has to be solved. Of course, Japan, for Japan, missile issue and nuclear issue, very important. Nuclear issue, missile issue, regarding these issues, at the US and North Korea summit meeting, first and foremost, I'm hopeful for the progress. And then on the issue of abduction, we will liaise, we will collaborate with the US and the international community, and Japan ourselves must talk directly with North Korea in the final analysis. I am determined about that.
Mr. Hayashi. Thank you. Prime Minister Abe, I have questions to Prime Minister as well as President Trump. Starting with Prime Minister, you have already mentioned to a certain degree on the abduction issue. In order to hold Japan-North Korea summit, the premise is that you need to obtain results for the abduction issue. What kind of concrete pathway are you envisaging to hold the summit meeting? In your meeting with President Trump today, have you asked President Trump to raise the question of abduction at the U.S.-North Korea summit meeting in Singapore? Next is my question to President Trump. The Kim Jong-un has maintained his position that the abduction issue is something that already had been resolved. So what kind of explanation has been given to the United States on the abduction issue in the North Korea to U.S. The consultations? And how should we approach the North Korea in order to seek solution for the abduction? And what did you convey to Prime Minister Abe today in this regard?
Well, you know, I can speak first because I will tell you on the Prime Minister's behalf that he very much talked about abduction. It was preeminent in our conversations. He talked about it long and hard and passionately, and I will follow his wishes, and we will be discussing that with North Korea. Absolutely. Absolutely. Prime Minister, go ahead.
Now, at our Japan-U.S. summit meeting we had in the Mar-a-Lago in February, today, once again, as President Trump has mentioned already, I have explained on the abduction issue once again, and I have conveyed to him the earnest wish of the families of the abductees. And President Trump once again has stated that the abduction issue will be raised at the upcoming U.S.-North Korea summit. Now, at the U.S.-North Korea summit meeting, as to the concrete matters to be discussed, I would like to refrain from mentioning this at this juncture. But in any case, Japan's thoughts and position were explained at length, and President Trump has given his understanding, and he has promised that the issue will be brought up at the summit meeting in Singapore. And I am delighted of this. President Trump and the international community, I would like to closely work with President Trump as well as the international community to seek solution to the issue. In solving the abduction issue, Japan itself needs to have direct consultation with North Korea. I have not changed my resolve in doing so. And under this decision and resolve, what will be conducive to solve the abduction issue. Of course, I will have to think about the summit meeting. For Japan, North Korea summit meeting, if we are to have the summit meeting, the nuclear, the missile, and what is more important, the abduction issue, the solution to all these issues must be sought. And I hope that we will be able to realize a summit meeting which would lead to solution of the problems. But first and foremost, we need to seek advancement for the abduction, nuclear and missile programs. Japan and U.S. should closely cooperate with each other so that we will be able to see great success for the historic U.S.-North Korea summit meeting. And Japan would like to give our all-out efforts and support. Thank you.
I'd like to just close by paying my highest respect and regards and love, frankly, I've got to know him very well, to the Warmbier family, the incredible family of Otto Warmbier, who was a brilliant, beautiful, terrific young man. And he has not died in vain, I can tell you that. He has not died in vain. So to the Warmbier family, our love and our respect. Also, I'd like to say that we were tremendously successful in getting our 3 hostages back, and I'm very thankful to the cooperation that we received from North Korea. And the 3 United States citizens are now very happily ensconced in their homes with their families. They're very happy. They didn't think this was going to happen, and frankly, it would never have happened, but it has. So I just want to wish them well also. They had a tough journey, but I really respect the fact that we were able to work with the North Korean folks and get them out. They're very, very well ingrained already. They're back into, they were telling me they're now going to movies and they're going out to dinner, and they're back. They're back in our country, and it's a terrific thing. I believe we're going to have a terrific success or a modified success, but in one form or another, if it all goes, and things can happen between now and then. But I know many of you are going, and I look forward to seeing you there. I look forward to traveling with you. It's a long way, but I really believe that we have the potential to do something incredible for the world, and it's my honor to be involved. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
And welcome to ABC News Live. I'm Devin Dwyer, joined by our contributor, ABC News contributor, Colonel Steve Ganyard, who's been to the region. You've been watching the press conference of President Trump with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe on the eve here of what will be a week-long trip for President Trump, first to the G7 in Canada, then to that historic summit down in Singapore with North Korea's leader. A lot of news, a lot of headlines out of that press conference, Steve, including the prediction that this will be a great success. The question is, how should we be defining success?
Success could be a safer world, but how do we get there? And negotiations that are required between not only the U.S., but South Korea, China, Japan, as we're seeing, needs to be included. And frankly, the UN. At the end, when the armistice was signed, when the fighting stopped with the Korean War, that was a UN signature that went on that paper. So the UN's got to get involved here. Lots of moving pieces, but we're seeing the kind of movement we haven't seen in 60, 70 years. And
the president calling this very much a get-to-know-you meeting, plus a part of a process, a first step toward, as what you've pointed out, Steve, is obviously a very complicated multi-party negotiation. He did say today, though, I will solve it. Which is pretty fascinating. Let's bring in our White House correspondent, Cecilia Vega, who is in the Rose Garden for the press conference. Cecilia, there was a little bit of expectation setting going on there, and what was your take?
Well, Devin, I think perhaps the most telling remark came at the very end when the president said this will be, quote, a terrific success or a modified success. So he went from talking about potentially solving world peace and being lauded for that to really downplaying expectations. But that's really no surprise here. I mean, that's been the case going in. We heard a few days ago from the president sort of seeming to downplay expectations and really what he might be able to get out of North Korea, and this being sort of a meet and greet plus, is what he initially called it. But, there were some headlines out of this here. He said that eventually, if things go well here, he would like to see normalized relations with North Korea. I mean, that's a big one. And then on the smaller end, he gave a nod to what was inside that big envelope that we saw handed to him last week in the Oval Office. He said that letter from North Korea was warm and it was just a greeting, but really I think he seems like he's looking forward to this trip, but he certainly is downplaying expectations right now.
That's right, and he even broke a little news there at the end talking about the potential of inviting Kim Jong-un to the White House. Imagine that. Steve, I think you've mentioned he might have some problems with his plane and
right.
some concerns at home perhaps to get all the way over here. Yes. But Cecilia, talk to us a little bit about preparation. The president not only speaking in the Rose Garden before he flies off, but he held forth in the Oval Office earlier, talked about how he's preparing. What can you tell us about how that's going?
Well, it's sort of along the lines of this will be a terrific success or a modified success. He either is prepared or he's not prepared going in. He said both of those things a few minutes before this Rose Garden press conference here. And speaking to reporters in the Oval Office with Prime Minister Abe right by his side, he was asked how he's been preparing because, as we all know in covering this president, this is not someone who enjoys a big fat briefing book ahead of a trip like this. But he says he is well prepared, but that really it's not about preparation going into this. It's about attitude. And that really is President Trump in a nutshell. Like, this is the art of the deal president. I mean, this is a man who knows how to make a deal. And I think he is going in very much with that attitude, that part of this is about talking about the possibility of inviting Kim to the U.S. in the days ahead of going to Singapore, talking about praising and thanking the North Koreans for the way that they handled the exchange of those 3 American hostages. He is laying it on thick right now because he knows what he is doing. And I think we are seeing the art of the deal play out in real time. But did he read briefing books ahead of time? He sort of admitted in the Oval Office that that's not really his style here. But he says he's well prepared despite not having perhaps done a lot of preparation going into this.
I think one point, just to pick up on Cecilia's point about this lack of preparation, this is a negotiating tactic. And it is going to drive the Chinese and the North Koreans nuts because they're used to very planned summits where everything's concluded before you actually meeting down to the minute. And here's a president who's confident in his ability to make a deal, to make that personal connection. And he says, I'm going to improvise, which means that all the planning that's going on in Pyongyang can be thrown out the window, and they've got an unpredictable somebody sitting on the other side of the table, which is a good negotiating tactic. But when you're talking about nuclear weapons and potential Armageddon, it's probably something that would not come to most diplomats.
That's right. Unpredictability, he's talked about, is his greatest asset, something Kim perhaps seems quite enamored with on the other side of the table. Who is this guy, President Trump? Cecilia, I don't know if you're still with us, but we know that he's not doing this alone. The 2 guys at the front lines of this negotiation were seated in the front row there in the Rose Garden. National Security Advisor John Bolton and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. We understand both are going with the president, right?
I'm sorry, Devin. I'm having a really hard time hearing you. Could you just repeat that last question for me?
Yeah. Tell us about the role of Mike Pompeo, Secretary of State, and the front lines, and John Bolton. They were there in the Rose Garden, and you've confirmed they are traveling with the president.
I'm really sorry, Devin. All I'm catching are the names. It's just our audio. We're having issues. You sound very over-modulated in my head.
All right. No problem. Cecilia, our senior White House correspondent, Cecilia Vega. A little technical difficulties there. It's crowded with all the Japanese.
Pick up with that. We can think about Secretary Pompeo as the nice guy. He's had dinner in New York with a Korean representative, and he's the backslapper. Pompeo is the dark knight. He scares the North Koreans. He got out in front of himself on national TV.
John Bolton
did. I'm sorry. Yeah. So Bolton got out in front of himself.
The Libya model.
And the Libya model, which means we're going to do a deal with you now, but you're going to be hanging from a light post within 2 years. So obviously the North Koreans, already worried about Bolton and scared of him, said, that's probably not the guy we want to have out in front. So the White House has pulled it back, put the nice guy Pompeo out in front. If they can get Rudy Giuliani to also be quiet and not talk about Kim on his hands and knees, that would probably be helpful going into these negotiations.
All right, so we got good cop, bad cop going with the president to Singapore. I want to drill down a little bit on that with you, Steve, and play a little bit about what the president said earlier in the Oval Office, setting expectations for the summit. He talked about what he wants Kim Jong-un to do. Take a listen.
I think I'm very well prepared. I don't think I have to prepare very much. It's about attitude. It's about willingness to get things done. But I think I've been preparing for the summit for a long time, as has the other side. I think they've been preparing for a long time also. So this isn't a question of preparation. It's a question of whether or not people want it to happen. And we'll know that very quickly. I'd love to say it could happen in one deal. Maybe it can. They have to denuke. If they don't denuclearize, that will not be acceptable. We cannot take sanctions off. The sanctions are extraordinarily powerful. We cannot, and I could add a lot more, but I've chosen not to do that at this time, but that may happen.
So, Steve, one of the big questions hanging over this whole summit is, what does denuclearization mean to Kim Jong-un? What is, and how is the U.S. defining it? What's your take right now where that definition is at?
So the president wants to get some sort of agreement that says we're going to get rid of nukes on the peninsula and peace, love, and understanding is going to break out.
Right.
The details of how that is done are going to have to be worked out with the staffs once they come to a common understanding. This is a question that's been worked for decades now. Democratic and Republican presidents have failed when they've tried to eliminate nukes. So does that mean the U.S. takes all its nukes out of the area as well? Does it promise we won't use them? Does it mean that the North Koreans will perhaps ship their nukes to China and let them hold them for them? So there are all sorts of ways that the North Koreans can play this, but the real question here is how upfront do they appear? How honest do they appear in their negotiation? If they pull out some of the cards that they've played against presidents going back as far as Clinton, those cards have been seen before, and I think very quickly somebody like John Bolton is going to say, nope, we're out of here because you're not being serious.
And when the president says he won't lift sanctions until they denuclearize, is it conceivable that the U.S. could also denuclearize our own weapons and our own troops off, if you will, off the peninsula simultaneously? Could we see something like that play out?
Yes, very good question, because that's why we see Prime Minister Abe today in the Rose Garden. Japan is very nervous. They are not at the table. They are not being taken into consideration. All they can say is, please do something about our handful of abductees. They can't bring any diplomatic pressure to bear. They don't have any economic pressure, and they have no military pressure. So they have no way to get to the table. They have to sit back and watch the U.S., South Korea, China, and North Korea negotiate something that could affect them. Because remember, just across the Sea of Japan is North Korea. And there are medium-range missiles that can easily hit Japan. So Japan's security is at stake here, and what gets decided could end up having U.S. forces drawn off and off somewhere else off the South Korean peninsula, which means that a strategic geographic buffer that has always been there to protect Japan from China and North Korea would no longer be there. So this makes the Japanese very nervous, and it could result in huge shifts in the U.S. security posture in Asia Pacific.
So the Japanese are nervous, the South Koreans are nervous, the
Chinese
Filipinos are nervous.
Chinese
They're
are
all
nervous.
nervous. We're headed to the summit 5 days from now. It'll be fascinating. But before we let you go, what makes this time different, Steve? We've been here before. It feels like history's repeating itself. We saw the North Koreans come to the White House on Friday. They'd been there 18 years ago, heard a lot of the same promises. We've done deals with the North Koreans before to denuclearize. Is there anything you see in this moment that makes it different?
The world changed when North Korea demonstrated not only a nuclear weapon, but the ability to hit the United States with that nuclear weapon. Up until that point, every Democrat and Republican president could kick the can down the road and said, we'll deal with that later. Now President Trump is being faced with a nuclear threat that no other president had ever faced before. And so that nuclear threat means that North Korea needs to be taken on. The can no longer be kicked down the road, and it's something that needs to be resolved. And this president is determined to do that.
All right, high stakes, I think, is a bit of an understatement with this whole thing. But the summit comes